Captain Vex Korthak leaned back in his command chair, admiring his reflection in the polished chrome of his ship's console. 8 feet of sleek alien perfection, with chitinous armor that gleamed like black silk and mandibles that could crack a starfighter's hull. He was what lesser species might call a space bug, if they were feeling particularly suicidal that day. "Easiest bounty of my career," he muttered, scrolling through the contract details on his datapad. The client wanted 1 human female, alive and unharmed. Some backwater species from a nothing planet called Earth. The payout was astronomical, which should have been his first red flag, but Vex had never been accused of overthinking. Subject designation, Maya Rodriguez, he read aloud, studying the holographic image of a small, dark-haired biped, 5 feet 4 inches, 130 pounds, primitive technology level. No known combat enhancements. His ship's AI designation Aria chimed in with her usual deadpan delivery. "Captain, I should mention that the Galactic database contains several warning flags regarding this species." "Warning flags?" Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Aria, look at her. She's tiny. These humans are soft, pink creatures who probably cry when it rains. What could possibly be dangerous about them?" "Well, sir, their planet has a rather concerning orbital classification. The Galactic Survey Bureau lists it as a Class 12 death world." Vex waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Bureaucratic nonsense. Every planet gets labeled a death world these days. It's all liability protection. Besides, look at the briefing data. These creatures use fossil fuels and projectile weapons. They haven't even figured out faster than light travel yet. My grandmother's cooking pot has more advanced technology." Aria's silence somehow managed to sound skeptical. "The contract specifically mentions that humans are docile when properly intimidated," Vex continued, already planning his victory celebration. "Apparently they have something called a flight or fight response, and 90% choose flight. Perfect for my specialty." "And what about the other 10%, sir?" "Simple statistics. Aria, there's always going to be outliers in any population. But look at the data. Average human strength is pathetic. Their reaction time is sluggish. They don't even have proper claws or natural armor. It's like the universe decided to create a species specifically for my convenience." Vex had built his reputation hunting what the bounty hunter community diplomatically called soft targets. Peaceful traders, researchers, the occasional corrupt politician who thought they could hide on some frontier world. He had a talent for psychological intimidation. And most species in the galaxy had enough sense to surrender when faced with 8 feet of nightmare fuel demanding their cooperation. "Course set for Earth," Captain Aria announced. "Estimated arrival in 72 hours. "Perfect. That gives me time to decide how to spend my retirement fund." Vex pulled up his banking information, already calculating compound interest. "Maybe I'll buy that moon in the Vega system. The one with the artificial beaches and the imported atmosphere." "Sir, if I may ask, why is the bounty so unusually high for what appears to be a routine extraction?" Vex paused in his financial planning. It was a good question. The payout was enough to buy a small fleet of ships or a very large yacht, or possibly a small moon with good shopping districts. For 1 unarmed human female, it did seem excessive. Probably some rich collector who wants an exotic pet, he decided. You know how these wealthy eccentrics get. They'll pay anything for bragging rights at their dinner parties. "Oh, this is my human. Yes, I had to import her from the other side of the galaxy. She does the most amusing tricks." Aria's processing sound suggested she was running additional database queries. "Captain, I'm finding some rather disturbing references to human military history." "Aria, they fight with metal sticks and chemical explosives. My armor could withstand their most powerful weapons without a scratch. Besides when this particular human is listed as a mechanic. She fixes primitive machines for a living. The most dangerous thing she's probably ever handled is a rusty wrench." "If you say so, sir." Vex grinned, showing rows of serrated teeth. In 72 hours, he'd be the richest bounty hunter in 3 sectors. What could possibly go wrong? Vex materialized just outside what his scanner identified as Rodriguez Auto Repair, a ramshackle building that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and optimism. The smell of motor oil and something called coffee hung in the air, along with the distinctive sound of human music that seemed to consist entirely of guitars and attitude. His target was exactly where his tracking equipment said she'd be, bent over the engine of a primitive two-wheeled vehicle. She wore what appeared to be work clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, grease stains on her hands and forearms. Perfect. Vex loved it when his prey was distracted and vulnerable. He activated his intimidation protocol, extending to his full height and letting his armor plates flare out menacingly. His mandibles clicked with practiced precision, the sound that had sent countless beings scrambling for cover. Maya Rodriguez didn't even look up. "You know," she said conversationally, still focused on whatever she was doing to the motorcycle's engine, "most people knock before entering someone's workspace. It's considered polite." Vex blinked. This wasn't how his intimidation routine usually went. "Human female, you will accompany me immediately. Resistance is futile and will only result in unnecessary discomfort." Now she looked up, wiping her hands on a rag with deliberate slowness. Dark eyes studied him with the kind of calm assessment usually reserved for broken machinery. "Let me guess, you're lost, right? Took a wrong turn at Albuquerque and ended up in the wrong galaxy?" "I am Captain Vex Korthak, licensed bounty hunter of the Galactic Federation. You have been designated for extraction and transport." Maya nodded thoughtfully, then returned to her work. "Aha. And I'm guessing you figured this would be easy? Just swoop down, grab the primitive human, collect your paycheck? Your species file indicates a high probability of compliance when properly motivated." Vex was starting to feel slightly off balance. His targets usually started begging by now. "Surrender now, and I guarantee you will not be harmed during transport." "That's sweet of you." Maya straightened up, tool still in hand. "But here's the thing, space bug. I'm going to give you 3 chances to walk away. This is chance number 1. Vex's mandibles clacked with amusement. "You threaten me? I am an apex predator. My species conquered 12 star systems before your ancestors learned to make fire. Congratulations. Very impressive. That's still chance number 1, by the way. Perhaps you do not understand your situation." Vex drew his plasma sidearm, a weapon capable of reducing a small building to constituent atoms. "This device can vaporize your entire primitive settlement." Maya examined the weapon with professional interest. "Nice craftsmanship. Energy cell looks a little dated, though. What is that, 3rd-generation Krelixian tech? They had stability issues with the quantum matrix on those models." Vex stared at her. "How do you know about Krelixian technology?" "I read manuals. Occupational hazard." Maya set down her tool and faced him fully. "Look, Captain Korthak, was it? I'm sure you're very scary where you come from. But right now, you're standing in my garage, threatening me in my own workspace, and frankly, that's just rude. Your compliance is not optional, human. And that's chance number 2. Maya's voice remained perfectly calm, but something in her posture changed. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but suddenly she looked less like a small human mechanic and more like something that might bite if cornered. "You cannot seriously believe you pose a threat to me." Vex gestured with his free hand at the obvious disparity in their sizes. "I am twice your height and 3 times your mass. My natural armor can deflect your primitive projectile weapons." "That's great for you. Really puts things in perspective." Maya stepped closer, which was absolutely not what cornered prey was supposed to do. "But here's what I think happened. Some idiot posted a bounty for a human, figured we'd be easy pickings, and didn't bother doing actual research. They just looked at our tech level and assumed we were pushovers. The research is comprehensive. Humans are classified as non-aggressive herbivores with minimal combat capability." Maya laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be more unsettling than Vex's mandible clicking. "Herbivores? Buddy, you really didn't do your homework. We're omnivores with a serious attitude problem and a talent for creative problem solving. Enough of this. Vex raised his weapon. You will come with me now, or I will demonstrate why resistance is futile. Maya shook her head with what looked like genuine disappointment. And that's chance number 3. I really hoped you'd take the hint and leave. She moved. What happened next would later be described by Vex as a catastrophic failure of intelligence gathering, though he used significantly more colorful language at the time. Maya Rodriguez moved like water, going around Vex's plasma blast and closing the distance between them and the time it took him to register that she was no longer where she had been. The wrench in her hand connected with his weapon arm with a precision that spoke of extensive practice hitting things in exactly the right spot to make them stop working. His plasma pistol clattered across the concrete floor as sensation fled his arm from the elbow down. That's your ulnar nerve, Maya explained conversationally as Vex stared at his suddenly useless limb. Whatever the equivalent is for your species. Figured it'd be in roughly the same place. Anatomy is pretty consistent across most humanoid forms. How did you Vex began? Nowhere to hit you? Lucky guess. Also, you guys really need to update your species profiles. Non-aggressive herbivores is just insulting. Maya ducked under his wild swing and drove her elbow into what she correctly guessed was his solar plexus equivalent. Vex doubled over, gasping. This was not going according to plan. Aria, he wheezed into his comm unit. Request immediate extraction. His ship's AI responded with what sounded suspiciously like amusement. I'm sorry, Captain, but I'm afraid I can't do that right now. What do you mean you can't? Vex's question was cut off as Maya introduced his left knee to a tire iron with the kind of precision that suggested she'd done this before. I mean, Aria continued, that I'm currently being hacked by what appears to be a very sophisticated artificial intelligence using techniques I've never encountered. She's been quite polite about it, though. She introduced herself and everything. Maya paused in her systematic dismantling of Vex's confidence and kneecaps. Oh, that's probably Mike. He's the Townsend guy, former NSA. He gets bored sometimes. Your primitive planet has artificial intelligence? Vex managed, trying to figure out how to stand on one working leg. Primitive is such a harsh word. We prefer selectively advanced. We've got AI, quantum computing, theoretical physics, and really good coffee. We just never bothered with space travel because, honestly, Earth is pretty nice. Vex lunged at her with his remaining good arm, activating his wrist-mounted energy blade. Maya sidestepped and grabbed a shop rag from her workbench. See, this is your problem right here, she said, using the rag to entangle his blade arm and redirect his momentum into a stack of old tires. You assume that just because we don't have starships, we don't have the technology to build them. We've had the theoretical framework for faster-than-light travel for decades. We just figured it wasn't worth the effort. Not worth the effort? Vex extracted himself from the tire pile, his armor now sporting several new dents and scratches. Why would we want to leave? We've got everything we need right here. Good food, decent climate, and enough variety to keep things interesting. Plus, we were pretty sure that if we started expanding into space, we'd eventually run into something like you. Maya picked up what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary screwdriver and held it like she knew exactly how much damage she could do with it. Something like me? Apex predator species with superiority complexes and a talent for underestimating the competition. Maya advanced slowly and Vex found himself backing toward the garage door. We've had plenty of practice dealing with that type. We call them bullies. I am not a bully. I am a licensed professional. Right, and I'm sure the Galactic Federation has very strict ethical guidelines about kidnapping people from their home planets. The contract is completely legal. Legal according to whose laws? You certainly didn't check with our government before deciding to abduct one of our citizens. Vex's retreat was stopped by the garage wall. Maya was still advancing, screwdriver held with casual competence. Your government consists of primitive nation-states with no unified authority. That's cute. You think we're not organized? Maya smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. Mike, patch me through to the collective, would you? Already done, Maya, came a voice from nowhere. They're very interested in meeting your new friend. The collective? Vex asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know. Earth's actual government. We let the politicians think they're in charge because it keeps them busy, but when it comes to planetary defense, we have different arrangements. Maya tapped the screwdriver against her palm thoughtfully. You should probably know that you triggered about 6 different early warning systems when you entered our atmosphere. We've been tracking you since you left orbit. That's impossible. Your technology is perfectly adequate for dealing with wannabe kidnappers with delusions of grandeur. Maya took another step forward. Now, you've got 2 choices. You can surrender peacefully, or I can demonstrate why humans evolved as persistence hunters. Persistence hunters? We chase things until they collapse from exhaustion, then we eat them. It's very effective. From his comm unit, Arya's voice added, Captain, I feel I should mention that my new friend has just shown me some fascinating historical documents about human military capabilities. Did you know they once conquered most of their planet using nothing but metal pointy sticks and attitude? Vex made a desperate grab for his fallen plasma pistol. Maya stepped on his hand. And that, she said pleasantly, is why you should have taken those 3 chances I gave you. 20 minutes later, Vex was discovering that humans had apparently perfected the art of restraints. He was zip-tied to a chair that had been dragged out of the garage office, his armor providing no protection against the plastic strips that somehow seemed specifically designed to be impossible to break. This is ridiculous, he muttered, testing the bonds for the 15th time. I am a professional bounty hunter. I do not get captured by garage mechanics. Former MMA fighter turned garage mechanic, Maya corrected, checking something on what appeared to be an extremely advanced tablet computer. There's a difference. Better benefits in auto repair, and people don't try to choke me unconscious for entertainment. MMA? Bay. Mixed martial arts. Competitive fighting. I retired after I broke too many opponents and the league started requiring me to fight with handicaps. Maya looked up from her tablet. Turns out there's not much difference between choking out a trained fighter and subduing an overconfident alien. Same basic principles apply. Vex's comm unit crackled to life. Captain, this is Loop. I'm approaching your coordinates with backup. What's your status? Maya raised an eyebrow. Oh, good. You called for help. Mike, you getting this? Every word came the AI's voice from speakers Vex was now noticing throughout the garage. Zloop appears to be traveling in a standard hegemony assault shuttle with 6 hired mercenaries. Species mix includes 2 Vorthan shock troopers, 3 Calarian raiders, and what appears to be a very confused Blix accountant. An accountant? I believe he was hired to handle the paperwork. Arya's voice added apologetically. Zloop is very thorough about documentation. Maya shook her head. Your partner brought an accountant to a kidnapping? Zloop believes in proper record-keeping, Vex said defensively. That's actually kind of sweet. Criminally insane, but sweet. Maya stood up, stretching like someone preparing for light exercise. Mike, let the collective know we've got incoming hostiles. Standard protocol. Already handled. Uncle Pete is mobilizing the neighborhood watch. Neighborhood watch? Vex asked. You'll see. Maya walked over to her workbench and began selecting tools with the care of a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. Fair warning, though. They take home security very seriously around here. Outside, the sound of engines approached, followed by the distinctive whine of landing thrusters. Zloop's voice echoed across the garage as he used what Vex assumed was supposed to be an intimidating amplification device. Attention, primitive humans. Release our associate immediately, and we will consider limiting the destruction of your settlement to non-essential structures. Maya paused in her tool selection. Non-essential structures? What's he planning to do? Audit us to death. Zloop takes a very systematic approach to intimidation, Vex explained. He'll probably start with a detailed analysis of your infrastructure weaknesses, then move on to economic disruption theories. That's the most terrifying thing I've heard all day, Maya said dryly. The garage door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and metal fragments. Through the smoke strode Zloop, all 4 feet of him, looking like a cross between a slug and a tax attorney. Behind him came his hired muscle, weapons drawn and looking professionally menacing. "Release Captain Korthak immediately," Zloop demanded, "or face the consequences of interference with a legitimate business operation." Maya looked at the assembled group of alien mercenaries, then at Vex, then back at the mercenaries. "You know what? I'm actually curious to see how this plays out. Mike, how long until the welcoming committee arrives?" "About 30 seconds. Uncle Pete was already suiting up when you called." "Suiting up?" Zloop asked suspiciously. The answer came in the form of what sounded like a small war starting in the street outside. Plasma bolts were answered by projectile weapons. Alien battle cries were countered by what sounded like very angry humans using remarkably creative profanity. "What is happening out there?" one of the Vorthan shock troopers asked, backing toward the ruined garage door. "That would be the neighborhood," Maya said pleasantly. "They don't like visitors who don't knock first." Uncle Pete appeared in the doorway, wearing what looked like military body armor that had been modified with duct tape and bad intentions. He was carrying a rifle that seemed to have been assembled from spare parts and pure spite. "Maya, honey, you okay in here?" he called, not taking his eyes off the intruders. "Just fine, Uncle Pete. These gentlemen were just explaining how they planned to destroy our non-essential structures." "Non-essential structures?" Uncle Pete's voice carried the kind of ominous calm that Vex was beginning to associate with humans who were about to do something unpleasant. "Son, every structure in this town is essential to somebody." Behind Uncle Pete, other figures appeared. Bob from down the street, wearing what appeared to be homemade explosive ordnance disposal gear and carrying a device that was definitely not regulation military hardware. Mrs. Chen from the corner store, wielding what looked like a modified cattle prod. Tommy the teenager from 2 blocks over, somehow managing to look menacing while holding what appeared to be a gaming laptop. "Zloop," Vex called weakly. "I think we may have underestimated the local resistance capabilities." "Nonsense," Zloop replied, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "These are primitive beings with obsolete technology." Tommy looked up from his laptop. "Did he just call our tech obsolete?" "Mike, show them the thing." "Which thing?" Mike's voice asked with artificial innocence. "The fun thing." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red light that made the humans look considerably more sinister. Then every piece of electronic equipment the aliens carried started playing what Vex could only describe as the most annoying music in the known universe. "Is that Zloop?" began. "Baby Shark," Maya confirmed. Tommy thought it would be funny. "Personally, I think it's a violation of the Geneva Convention. But technically we're not at war." The Blix accountant dropped his datapad and covered his auditory organs. "Make it stop," he pleaded. "I'll confess to anything." "We're not interrogating you yet," Uncle Pete said kindly. "This is still just the welcoming committee." An hour later, the aliens found themselves zip-tied in Maya's garage, arranged in a neat row like a very dangerous and very confused police lineup. The Blix accountant was softly weeping, though whether from the zip-tie situation or the lingering effects of Baby Shark was unclear. Maya sat backwards on a folding chair, arms crossed over the backrest, studying her captives with professional interest. Uncle Pete had claimed the corner, where he was methodically cleaning a collection of weapons that seemed to grow more intimidating with each revealed piece. So Maya began conversationally, "Let's talk about human history." "I don't understand the relevance," Zloop said, trying to maintain some dignity despite being restrained by what he insisted on calling primitive plastic strips. "Oh, it's very relevant. See, you guys keep calling us primitive, but I don't think you really understand what that word means when applied to humans." Maya stood up and walked to a whiteboard that had been wheeled in from somewhere. "Mike, can you pull up a timeline?" The whiteboard lit up with what was clearly not primitive display technology. A holographic timeline appeared, stretching back thousands of years and marked with what appeared to be an alarming number of conflicts. "Let's start with the basics," Maya said, pointing to the earliest entries. "Humans have been perfecting warfare for approximately 10,000 years, give or take a millennium. We started with pointy sticks, but we were very dedicated to the process of improvement. All species develop weapons," one of the Vorthan shock troopers said dismissively. "True, but most species develop weapons for hunting or defense. Humans developed weapons for the specific purpose of fighting other humans who had also developed weapons for fighting humans. It's a very specialized evolutionary pressure." Uncle Pete looked up from a device that Vex was fairly certain violated several interstellar treaties. "She's being modest. We didn't just develop weapons. We developed strategy, tactics, logistics, intelligence gathering, psychological warfare, and about 15 different ways to make boom things go boom more efficiently. For example," Maya continued, advancing the timeline, "by the time we figured out agriculture, we'd already invented the siege. We were besieging cities before we'd figured out writing. That's dedication to the craft." The timeline showed an increasingly complex web of conflicts, innovations, and what could only be described as creative applications of violence. "This is all very interesting," Zloop interrupted, "but hardly relevant to current circumstances. Your primitive weapons cannot—" "Oh, we're not talking about weapons yet. We're still on basic military philosophy." Maya smiled that unsettling smile again. "See, most species fight until one side wins. Humans developed the concept of total war, where you don't just defeat the enemy army, you defeat the enemy's entire capacity to make war. Infrastructure, supply lines, civilian morale, economic systems. We're very thorough." "That's barbaric," the Blix accountant whispered. "It's efficient," Uncle Pete corrected, holding up what appeared to be a grenade modified with additional explosives and a cheerful smiley face sticker. "Speaking of efficiency, Maya, should I tell them about Vietnam?" "Let's save Vietnam for later. Right now I want to talk about World War II." Maya advanced the timeline to the 1940s. "This is when we really hit our stride. Industrial warfare. Mass production of death. We turned our entire planet into a weapons factory and kept it running for 6 years. The holographic display showed production numbers that made even the Vorthan shock troopers shift uncomfortably. "We built 60,000 tanks in a single year," Maya continued. 300,000 aircraft. 40 million tons of shipping. All while simultaneously developing theoretical physics, computer science, and rocket technology. And then, Uncle Pete added happily, "we invented atomic weapons." The aliens went very quiet. "Oh yes," Maya said, noticing their reaction. "We split the atom. Not for power generation, you understand. We figured out nuclear fission specifically to build bigger bombs. Because apparently regular explosives weren't explodey enough." "You developed nuclear weapons in a pre-space civilization?" Zloop's voice had gone up an octave. "Took us about 3 years from theory to city-flattening practical application. Then we built bigger ones. Because we're overachievers. At one point, we had enough nuclear weapons to sterilize our entire planet several times over. We called it mutually assured destruction. And we thought it was a perfectly reasonable foreign policy." "That's insane," one of the Calarian raiders said. "That's humans," Uncle Pete replied cheerfully. "We looked at the prospect of extinction-level warfare and decided it was an acceptable risk if it meant nobody could push us around." Maya advanced the timeline further. "After that, we developed precision-guided munitions, satellite surveillance, electronic warfare, cyber warfare, psychological operations, and about 47 different ways to make people explode from very far away. And then Mike's voice added from the speakers they invented the internet, and things got really interesting." "The point," Maya said, sitting back down, "is that humans aren't primitive. We're selectively advanced. We focused our technological development on 2 primary areas, killing things efficiently and fixing things efficiently. Sometimes simultaneously." Uncle Pete held up a device that looked like a medical scanner crossed with a plasma rifle. Field surgery tools. Saves time when you need to patch someone up and shoot someone else in the same operation. But you don't have space travel, Zloop protested weakly. We don't need space travel, Maya replied. We've got everything we want right here. And as you've just discovered, we're perfectly capable of defending it. She stood up and walked over to where Vex was sitting. The really funny thing is that your species profile lists us as non-aggressive herbivores. Do you know what actual non-aggressive herbivores do when predators show up? They run, Vex said quietly. They run. But do you know what omnivorous persistence hunters with anger management issues and a 10,000-year history of military innovation do when predators show up? Vex looked around the garage, taking in Uncle Pete's weapons collection, the zip-tied alien mercenaries, and Maya's entirely too calm expression. They fight back, he said. They fight back, Maya confirmed. And they're really, really good at it. 6 hours later, Vex found himself in the unprecedented position of helping to load his own ship's cargo bay. Not because he was being particularly helpful, but because Maya had needed extra hands and had temporarily freed his restraints under the watchful eye of Uncle Pete and his expanding collection of improvised weaponry. I still don't understand how you did it, Vex said, carefully maneuvering a piece of equipment that had definitely not been in his ship when he'd arrived. Did what? Maya asked innocently, though her hands were currently buried in the quantum drive assembly of his ship's engine. All of this. The technology integration, the reverse engineering, the complete systematic dismantling of our technological superiority. Vex gestured helplessly at his ship, which now bore more resemblance to a collaboration between alien engineering and human creativity than its original design. Oh, that. Maya emerged from the engine compartment, wiping her hands on a rag that had somehow acquired several new grease stains and colors that didn't exist in terrestrial physics. Turns out your technology really isn't that advanced. It's just different. Different? You guys focused on energy efficiency and miniaturization. Very elegant, very sophisticated. But you never had to deal with the kind of environmental pressures that make you over-engineer everything for worst-case scenarios. Maya patted the engine housing affectionately. Your quantum matrix is beautiful, but it's not designed to handle the kind of abuse that human equipment takes for granted. Uncle Pete looked up from where he was installing what appeared to be an Earth-manufactured weapons system into the ship's defensive array. She's being polite. Your stuff is fancy, but it's fragile. Built for civilized space where people follow rules and nobody tries to jury-rig a plasma cannon out of spare parts and spite. Our technology is the product of millennia of refinement, Zloop protested from where he was supervised by Bob, who was apparently an expert in explosives, demolitions, and making people nervous with power tools. Right, and that's the problem, Maya said. You refined it for perfect conditions. Humans develop technology for imperfect conditions, because perfect conditions don't exist on Earth. Everything we build has to work when it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, or being actively shot at by someone who really wants to break it. She gestured to the modifications she'd made to the ship's systems. Your quantum drive is a marvel of precision engineering. But what happens when someone hits it with a rock? It breaks, Arya said dryly. As I discovered when Maya began her educational demonstration of human problem-solving techniques. Exactly. So I fixed that, and improved the power coupling efficiency, and added redundant safety systems, and installed a few upgrades that you guys somehow never thought of. Vex looked around his ship, noting details he'd missed before. The new components weren't just additions, they were improvements. His ship was now more advanced than when he'd started, despite being worked on by someone from what he'd thought was a primitive civilization. How is this possible? He asked. Because Tommy called from where he was installing some kind of entertainment system, you guys never had to fix stuff with whatever was lying around. We've been doing that for thousands of years. MacGyver is basically our patron saint. MacGyver? Cultural reference, Maya explained. He was a fictional character who could build anything out of paper clips and ingenuity. Very popular with engineers. The point is, Uncle Pete added, you guys are used to having the right parts and the right tools and the right conditions. Humans are used to making the wrong parts work with improvised tools under terrible conditions while someone shoots at us. Maya stood back to admire her work. Your ship will now, he thought she was prey, then she gave him 3 steps to regret it.